For anyone who tried to decipher what Steph Curry said after the Raptors game is waving the white flag of the Golden State Warriors, Steph Curry says, "You are absolutely insane" on today's show.
Who can stop Steph Curry?
Hopefully we'll never find out.
There's not many defenses in the world that can stop him.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is the good word, everyone? Welcome into Locked On Warriors, and thank you for making it a part of your day. It's brought to you by FanDuel. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. We're free and available wherever you get your audio podcast. You can also check us out on YouTube. We stream lives after the game and Monday through Friday. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On today's show, we got Evan Giddings of 95.7 The Game. You can also hear him on the call for the St. Mary's Gales radio call. Myself, Charlie Walter, formerly at 95.7 The Game, a co-host of Evan's, a producer with Evan, and also covered the championship run in 21-22 for CBS News Bay Area. On today's show, Steph Curry explains what he meant, although I don't think it needed any explanation. He stands by what he said when he basically explained that the Warriors should not go too crazy with any trades that may come about just to trade. Also, Andrew Wiggins has been excellent. We're talking about the play from Wiggs, a positive spin on this season as the Warriors sit 20-20. And can Gui Santos be a guy? Can Gui be a guy? We're breaking this all down. Evan, how we doing, man? I see you are at the Gale Stadium right now.
Yeah, about an hour and a half away from tip-off between St. Mary's and Pepperdine. But let's talk about the Warriors, all right? I'm happy to be on. I'm happy to be with you because that was a basketball team that I had not seen for like a month and a half in Minnesota. And it was a great win for them. And it just sucks that it feels like no one necessarily was giving it that much credit because it got them back to 500. It completed a 500 road trip. They're 500 on the road. They're 500 home. They're 500 a team. And so when you hear Steph Curry calling out all of the Twitter fingers, the naysayers, everyone else, and telling them to shut the hell up, it is interesting because he says he doesn't want to be in an average team, and yet they are the very definition, Chuck, of average.
We're going to talk about, though, because I asked Kolsky last night, and he kind of danced around the question. I'm going to ask you point blank, are the Warriors closer to being, a lottery team and trying to capture ping pong balls and a potential flag with a 2 or 3% chance? Or are they close to that 4 or 5 seed? Is this dynasty done as we know it? Or can they sprinkle a few things around and still be competitive? But Steph Curry, here's what he said. And basically, he told everyone to shut the hell up and let us figure this out. There's so much narrative surrounding this team right now, and it's obviously because of what's happened in the past for the Golden State Warriors. But if you just took away all the championships that they had won and looked at the fact that this team still has a lot of room for growth together, obviously they have a lot of young players and they have tradable assets. Basically what Steph Curry is saying is just give us a second to figure this thing out. The deadline's in 3 weeks. We're going to do what makes the most sense. Here was his explanation of those comments.
Anybody who thinks that I'm okay with just being an average basketball on an average basketball team is insane. Take whatever I said, I still stand on it, but that doesn't mean that you're not in a situation where you're trying to get better, make appropriate moves that help you do that. Mike knows that. We've talked about it. That's the expectation for me, trying to help lead the team where we want to go. Again, that doesn't mean that you're reckless. What people's definition of that is where I was talking about the Twitter fingers thing. Like, trade machines are fun, but what does that actually look like? So we're going to handle our business. Mike's going to handle his and see where we end up.
I always wonder, like, how deep into the weeds these athletes get when it's, like, are they driving home on the radio listening to Giddings spew his takes on 95.7 The Game? Or are they seeing tweets from random burner accounts? Are they just going off of what's being said on the worldwide leader, ESPN? Like, I always wonder how deep into the weeds they're getting, but it has been a consensus take from the Warriors fan base. Like, you got to do something. I don't care if it's going out and getting some size with Vucevic and giving away first-round picks. Do it. Do this, do that, bring up Quinton Post, like change everything, because what is on the floor right now is not working. But I want to go back to what you said, because Steph Curry said, I'm not okay with being on an average team. This is a very average team right now. So how do you depict those comments in the most rational way possible to you?
Well, I think number one, they're closer to being an above average than a below average team, in my estimation. And I'm not saying it's just because I sipped the Kool-Aid of the 12-3, but I do think that if it's a team in kind of a middling Western Conference, like they're 2 games from 6th, they're 2 games from 13th, like they're right in the thick of things. Do I think they can be a top 4 seed? Absolutely not. I don't think this team can win a championship, but I also don't think they're necessarily done. Like, I think this is a team that can add around the margins. They're in the mix as far as potential trades are concerned. If they choose not to, I also think what Curry is telling us is he is hyper aware of the reason why they're not going to make a move between now and the trade deadline. And that also indicates unity. I think it indicates a direction. And even though we can't necessarily see it, I also think that Curry is not a guy that would just stand idle, which a lot of people are painting him as, just the silent, okay superstar with being a middling basketball team. That's not the way that I read it. What I read it as, Curry's doing everything he can to win a potential 5th title, and it's up to him, along with the front office, to make the correct choice, because I think they also have a very thin margin for error. One thing they do not have, and the fan base is correct about this, Chuck, it's time. But they're also hyper aware of that. And so if they make one wrong move, the remainder of Curry's career will be moot. And I think he's afraid of making the wrong choice as opposed to making the correct one, which right now, I think by hearing from them, but also just as a basketball fan looking around the rest of the landscape, that move isn't there right now. And I think they're okay with trying to fight through it.
And that's why they said sometimes the best thing to do is nothing, because you never know 4 or 5 months down the road when the right move does come about. And when that move comes about, you got to have the trade chips. And if you start giving away those trade chips right now for fine moves around the edges and, trading away some of your youth, you don't know how this thing looks. One thing that we do know.
Real quick. I do think it's funny that you talk about moves that weren't made. Like, if the all-in mentality that the Twitterverse and Warriors fans had wanted to happen across this dynasty, Klay Thompson would have been traded for Kevin Love back in 2012. Or 2013. So that kind of move, sometimes when you don't make it, it's the right move. And from that point, I think they're correct.
Steph Curry, man, don't look now. We're quick to react. Everyone said he's losing a step. And the reason that we say he's losing a step isn't necessarily because of the way that he plays. It's just, it's natural to react that way. Father Time is undefeated. This is a young man's league. You see Steph go out a couple games in a row and put up 12 points, 16 points, whatever it may be. And you start to question how much longer can he play at this, forget all-star, but all-NBA level. And sure, it may be second team, sure, it may be third team, but still very effective to where he can be the best player on the floor with the likes of earlier in the year. You saw it with Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and with Luka Doncic. Like, he has games where he takes over. Yesterday, Anthony Edwards is on the floor, a potential generational talent. Steph Curry winds up being the best player on the hardwood at the end of the game. So don't look now. Since Christmas, 9 games, Steph's been averaging 25 points per game. 4 of those games, he scored 30-plus points. So the time is running out quickly. What are the Warriors going to do? Well, one thing that they can do, in my opinion, empower Andrew Wiggins. We take a deep dive into the numbers. That's coming up on Locked On Warriors.
Forget that. We champs. Why are you starting with that question? We got 4 championships.
All right, today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5. You'll get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. That's $300 to keep the action going. The FanDuel app is easy to navigate, and the variety of bets keeps every game exciting. Also, live betting. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. No waiting around. Visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $300 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Today's episode is also brought to you by Skims. Let me tell you about Skims. It is good stuff, everyone. When I found out they were making underwear for men, I was intrigued. I've heard so much about the quality from my brother. I had to give it a try. And let me tell you all, the undies live up to the hype. I've always had an issue with underwear, whether it's fit, comfort, or just finding the right style. Skims changed it all. It changed my life, everyone. The men's line offers something for everyone, from boxer briefs, classic briefs, all designed with the perfect balance of comfort and style. My favorite, I would probably say, with the active lifestyle, I'd go with the Stretch 5 boxer brief. It's good for working out. And you can find them at Skims Men's at skims.com/LockedOnNBA and Skims stores. Let them know we sent you after you place your order. Select podcast in the survey and select our show in the drop-down menu that follows. Tell them Chuck sent you the Stretch 5 boxer brief. You'll add about 5 pounds onto your squat, everyone.
Who can stop Steph Curry?
Hopefully we'll never find out.
All right, we've been talking about some reasons for optimism, and it's the play of Steph Curry. He's really started to pick it up as of late and shows no signs of slowing down, although he is going to be out in the second game or first game of back-to-backs for at least the foreseeable future, it sounds like. Playoffs, that probably won't be the deal, but the Warriors got to get to the playoffs. I mean, fire up the Jim Mora. The playoffs, you got to get there. And right now, they are hovering around play-in team, along with the Phoenix Suns, who has traded away just about everyone. But the Warriors 20-20. One reason to be excited is the play of Andrew Wiggins. When he shoots over 15 attempts per game, it's kind of the Warriors' secret sauce somewhat. I mean, their secret sauce, that they got a bunch of them right now. They got the Thousand Island. They got the honey mustard. They got different things. The Thousand Island Buddy Hield. When he scores like 18-plus points, the Warriors are winning basketball games. When the Warriors have 30-plus assists, they are winning basketball games. When they shoot at 50% from three, they are winning basketball games. Those things all make sense. But Andrew Wiggins, when he shoots over 15, he's been very effective. 12 games this season. The Warriors win the majority of them. He shoots at like 60% from the floor and averages 22.2 points per game. So I ask you, because last night it made sense why he was very, very aggressive, taking on Anthony Edwards, who is kind of like him years ago, the savior, the number one pick of the Minnesota Timberwolves, his former team. But why can't Wiggs be that guy every single night? Where is the aggression always?
Well, I think it's the story of his career, right? He has a number one's talent, like you mentioned with Ant. He has sometimes a number two mentality, and then he has a number three type of approach as far as his podium game and his public perception. Like Andrew Wiggins is in very much a basketball enigma in a sense. But I will say you're absolutely correct that the aggression, the aggressive stats are where you can look towards for him to be effective. And it's not just shots taken, but in Minnesota, it was free throws. Like, he didn't shoot the ball particularly well in that game. I believe he was 6 of 16, 2 of 8 from 3, but he got to the line 12 times. That is tied for the most he has ever been to the free throw line wearing a Golden State Warriors jersey. That means that he was active. And it wasn't just, of course, there. He also had the offensive rebound late in that game off a GP2 missed free throw that helped seal that victory. So Andrew Wiggins, I think, is in a really good mental place right now, though he's had a bit of a roller coaster ride like the Warriors has. To me, it's figuring out how they can integrate Kuminga back in alongside Wiggins with Curry. If that threesome can play high-level basketball and they all can play quality at the same time, then this makes this Warriors basketball team a scary team. The question is how they do it.
Yeah, and I wondered with, Andrew Wiggins starting the season at the 2 and Kuminga at the 3, Draymond at the 4, if the Warriors would ever go back and, explore that lineup. Sometimes McConaughey said it best. Sometimes to move forward, you got to go back. And that's something that seems like it could work. Play a little bigger, put Andrew Wiggins at the 2. At one point, he was considered a shooting guard. That was considered his natural position. But I'm going to spin zone this with the fact that Jonathan Kuminga had been coming off the bench before he was injured, had been playing incredible basketball. I would have to think he has some trade value. I'll throw up the Warriors' first-round picks here because they have a ton of them: 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 31, Like, they have assets to move, to attach to potentially Jonathan Kuminga. The question is now the financial factor and who can you get back, who could potentially be on the move. You don't want to lose him in the summer, though. It's why it's such a strange dynamic. If you were the Warriors front office, how would you approach this situation with Jonathan Kuminga, making sure that you don't overpay, that you don't underpay and lose out on him, and at the same time that you don't lose out on a potential asset that you could have brought in by trading him right now when his position is technically blocked?
Well, I think if they were going to trade him, the best time to do it would have been this summer, because then another team would have the choice of whether or not to extend him and get that done and come into a number, which obviously he and the Warriors could not. I personally think that the Warriors are not going to trade him by the deadline. In fact, I think they're also going to offer him a contract. The one place that the Warriors might have some wiggle room with Kuminga, and it obviously depends on how he plays the rest of the season. I think they're hoping that he proves that he deserves to be a Warrior for a long, long time. But if he doesn't, Chuck, you could sign and trade him. Like, restricted free agency is what it is, but there's really only two teams in the NBA, the Nets and I believe the Sixers, with the viable cap space to go out and acquire him. So the Warriors do have some flexibility as far as this summer and still being able to move him. I just don't think it happens by the deadline. And I personally wouldn't do it because I don't think there's a player out there that is capable of reaching the potential that Jonathan Kuminga has. And that's really what he's always been in a question mark. I don't think you develop a guy for 4 years, get him to the precipice of whatever you believe his potential to be, and then ship him off for a role player. In my mind, that's bad business.
So let's say you're a betting man. You're at the FanDuel Sportsbook, and they come up with some hypothetical bet that lists like 6 players that will be the next Golden State Warrior. And the list of those players, you know, you got like Vucevic at plus 110. You got like a Miles Turner at plus 230. You got some crazy dark horse like Jimmy Butler at plus 500. You have some smaller names, whatever it may be. Who do you, if you could set the line, you know, and give yourself plus 200 odds for any player being the next Golden State Warrior, who do you think it would be? Would it be at this deadline? Will it be next offseason? Like, where do the Warriors go next? Have you looked into free agency moving forward? What is their next plan? Or are you just as confused as everyone else?
Well, I think the Warriors, number one, yes, don't have much of a vision. They have a lot of flexibility and optionality and ambiguous words that, quite frankly, indicate to me they don't really know what they're doing. But I think at the deadline, if there was a player that I would have, I don't know, odds-on favorites to become a Warrior, it would be Jonas Valanciunas. And I think it's a player that is easily gettable. The whole reason he signed in Washington to me was conspicuous because he's a better player than 3 for 33 or whatever they signed him to. The Warriors obviously have a history of trading with a former Golden State Warriors front office member in Travis Schlenk, who now runs the Washington Wizards. And now obviously they made the deal for Jordan Poole for Chris Paul last offseason. So they have a history. I think that's the player that I would identify. And I also think a player that can help the Warriors, because though I like Trace Jackson Davis, I like Kevon Looney, Jonas Valanciunas gives them legitimate beef in the middle, and he can also step out and hit a 3 if he needs to. So he's kind of a Dennis Schroeder type of acquisition. I think he's low risk, high reward, and I think that's the kind of moves that the Warriors have shown that they're willing to make.
Put you right back on the spot. Will Schroeder be a part of any deal come deadline? Are they starting to see the fruits of their own labor and developing him within the system, I guess you could say, to where he's starting to look better, he's starting to shoot better, he's starting to form a bond with Trace Jackson Davis, it seems, in that pick and roll. Your thoughts on Schroeder and his future as a Golden State Warrior, because they could extend him, you know, past this season.
Yeah, I don't think they will. I wasn't a huge fan of the Schroeder trade just because I don't really think his game fits what the Warriors do. But to be fair, he probably has him in a better position than if he wasn't on this team, especially with the amount of injuries that they've sustained. I don't think Schroeder is traded unless there is an unforeseen bigger contract type player that the Warriors do want to go after. And to me, that I don't think it's Jimmy Butler, but really the only guy that I think makes sense for the kind of money that Schroeder would need to be involved in would be a guy like Zion Williamson. But I think that there's so many risks attached to him that the Warriors would be kind of afraid to get themselves involved. But that'd be the biggest swing I think that they could make based on the reports that are out there. So unless Schroeder is involved in a deal that brings back a big fish, like I don't think he's involved in Vucevic. I don't think he's involved in Valanciunas. I think they like Schroeder enough. And you're right. He has been playing better. It's also because he couldn't be able to play any worse. So at this point, he can help the Warriors win a few games, and he probably ends up being on the team.
You're not lying about that, man. Yeah, the Zion one to me, like, I think it's a pretty decent gamble. The issue is I don't think the Pelicans are going to give him up. I just don't think you sell someone with their stock being the lowest. I think Ingram's on his way out the door. And, I mean, Murphy, man, for the Pelicans, he's their guy. Like, he's the one that no one's talking about. He is a dude. Can Gui Santos be a dude? Or can Gui be a guy? Let's talk about it.
I am a Golden State Warrior trying to win another championship.
Today's episode is brought to you by our friends over at Robinhood. With Robinhood Gold, you can now enjoy the VIP treatment, receiving a 3% IRA match on retirement contributions. The privileges of the very privileged are no longer exclusive. With Robinhood Gold, your annual IRA contributions are boosted by 3%. Plus, you also get 4% APY on your cash and non-retirement accounts. That's over 8 times the national savings average. The perks of the high net worth are now available for any net worth. The new gold standard is here with Robinhood Gold. To receive your 3% boost on annual IRA contributions, sign up at Robinhood.com/gold. Investing involves risk. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold at $5 a month for 1 year from first match. Must keep funds in IRA for 5 years. Go to Robinhood.com/boost. Over 8 times the national average savings account interest rate claim is based on data from the FDIC as of November 18, 2024. Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC. Gold membership is offered by Robinhood Gold LLC. Back to the show.
Forget that. We champs. Why are you starting with that question? We got 4 championships.
All right, let's get into some Gui Santos. And first of all, the Valanciunas trade, if I guess to make your point a little more enticing to Warriors fans, they get to watch him. The Washington Wizards are up next. That game is on Saturday. I believe, without looking, the Washington Wizards are the worst team in the NBA. I'd be stunned if someone was worse. They're 6-32 right now. Now the Raptors have 10, Jazz, Blazers, they're around 8 or 9.
You are correct.
I figured I was correct. 6-32 is absolutely abysmal. Disgusting basketball. But hey, we'll get the chance to see Jordan Poole, to see the old PBJ. If Baldwin's getting some run in there, the stats don't imply that he's getting much run. But hey, Gui Santos is. Gui Santos was drafted around the same time as those two, or at least PBJ. And Gui's been good, man. The last game for the Golden State Warriors, I guess the last few, he's shown that even when he's not knocking down shots, he's just a pesky basketball player. He's kind of smart. He gets into passing lanes. He can block shots. He can get rebounds. He's always that guy that is saving balls that are going out of bounds. He seems like that just junkyard dog, so to speak. And now he's starting to get some minutes too. What'd you think of his game and his first start ever as an NBA player, getting 21 minutes, knocking down a 3, a couple of shots, 7 rebounds, 3 assists, went out there and played hard with 4 fouls, 5 points in the game. Stat sheet doesn't say a lot, but do you think he's carved out some playing time for this team, or is it just too deep when they're fully healthy?
When they're fully healthy, I think he's probably the 14th man on the roster. And look, Steve Kerr has been willing to play up to 13. I just think he's probably the 14th guy. But he did remind me a lot of what Draymond Green typically brings to this team, which is what you mentioned, not massive box score stats, but you watch the game and you're like, gosh, that guy's energetic. He's impactful. He can switch, do multiple things. I think Gui Santos is a guy that the Warriors should be happy to have that can step in, because he brings something that I think was really the key to their 15-game start, which they had, was energy. And I think they were able to do that because they played so many dudes. But now as they're being beaten down by injury, you need players to step up. Gui Santos is like the one player in this team, Chuck, that's fresh. Shout out one of my favorite Samuel Jackson movies. And so I think Santos is a player that is probably not going to be around in the lineup for a long time, but he kind of symbolizes what the Warriors lack, which is effort, which is energy, and I think a freeness that not a lot of players have been playing with when they've been losing games. So he made me think about, I'll say this though, he made me think about life without Draymond Green, and not because he's the guy who steps into it, but because he did a lot of things that Draymond usually does.
Quinton Post is the antithesis of Draymond Green, I think. He's 7 foot. He's 238 pounds, hangs out around the perimeter quite a bit, shoots threes. In Santa Cruz right now, he's shooting 6 a game. Post is actually struggling at just 28%, but we saw from his days at Boston College, he can knock him down. He's also shooting 76% from the line as a big man that shows, I guess, he's got a little bit of touch with that size. But 17 points per game. He's averaging 8.5 rebounds. I'm starting to see the Warriors fans beg for a little Quinton Post. He's 7 feet. He adds that size that the Warriors haven't had, and they're not begging for him to get significant minutes. They're just begging for him to be on the bench every single night and be an available asset if you need him. Now, I thought I saw enough in the preseason to show me that he is not ready for this show quite yet, even though he is going on 25 years old in about 30 days or 60 days, something along those lines, 2 months. But to you, are the Warriors in any type of a position where they can start giving this guy some run who's dominating right now in the G League, who they spent a second-round draft pick on and is nearly 25 years of age? Like, is now the time to see what he is?
No, it is not.
Agreed with you. Glad we're on the same page there. Because
when you're desperate, even though Curry doesn't believe that they are, that's not the time to be just throwing all caution to the wind. I mean, if I was to tell you that Quinton Post's ceiling was Dario Saric, I think a lot of people that at least know ball would take that career. Like, Saric is a halfway decent role player. He got played off the floor last year with the Warriors because you can't just be a big that can shoot. You actually have to be able to defend. You have to switch. You have to do so many things that the college game does not demand of you, that being 7 feet or close to it simply doesn't mean that you're going to be an impactful player in the NBA.
Let me interject real quick, though, because his defensive rating is 110 right now in the G League. That's, I mean, it's nothing to slouch at, I guess. What makes you so confident, and I guess what would make the Warriors front office so confident that he can at least play on the same floor? I'm not saying affect the games and a big positive impact, but I'm just saying get some reps and get better in the process. Just the eye test?
Yeah, I mean, well, just from seeing him, but also it's like just being able to set a pick, step out and hit a three. That's like one thing that you have to do to help the Warriors. You also have to be able to pass. You have to be able to move. You have to be able to make the proper decision, which is a big reason why some players that are far more talented than Quinton Post can't see the floor for the Warriors. He's also, I think, buried behind a couple of centers and potentially another one if they make a trade that won't allow him to get there. So as much as I don't mean to rag on the kid, I'm not saying his career is over necessarily, but to me now is not the time to try and experiment with Quinton Post.
Well, it starts to feel like his career is over when you go on the fact that he's, 25 years of age and the Warriors need some size like right now, and he can't see a minute unless literally everyone, and by everyone, 6 players on the Warriors are out with injury, then he can get 1 second. It does make you wonder, like, what the Warriors saw in him to trade back into the draft and draft him when you thought that, he would kind of be ready at this age. But it does seem like he's a developmental piece. Maybe next year he carves out some sort of a role, or maybe like many second-round draft picks out there, we never hear his name 2 years down the road. So we will see about that one. Any final thoughts about this team before we let you get on with the prep and call some Pepperdine waves against the Gales of Moraga?
Yeah. Throw the record books out when those two come to town. I think with the Warriors, to me, again, I think they're on the northern side of 500. I don't think they're a championship team. I don't think that they're a move away. But I also love the fact that they're unified right now in their goals, which is to compete at the highest level possible. I think to me, what I heard from this week from the Warriors, along with, of course, the shut the hell up Twitter fingers type of commentary from Curry, we need to reset our expectations for what this team can be. I think we were all jaded by their start into thinking that this could be a 2022 run. And I think the front office also needs to temper expectations. We've heard a lot of messaging about going for a 5th title and maximizing windows and big hunting. All of that, I think, was not that realistic in the first place. And all these rumors about players that could have been gotten, could have been acquired, we've come to find the Warriors weren't really all the way in anyway. So to me, both the fans as well as the front office and the players need to temper expectations of what this team can be, because quite honestly, Chuck, they're somewhere in the middle. They're another team. But it doesn't mean that they can't play some high-level basketball, win some games they're not supposed to, and try and sneak into the playoffs, which in my opinion should have been the goal in the first place.
I mean, hell, you look at the Bay Area, what, at this point, 17 years ago or 18 years ago, whatever it was, and a team sneaks into the playoffs as an 8 seed, and it sparks a revolution. You know, it sparks a team that they talk about decades later. But it just does feel like after you have all this success and you still have a little taste of the past on that team with Hall of Famers and with NBA champions and with the coach, that the expectation is just always going to be championship or bust. And you're right. It's not fair. The only thing they can do is get to the playoffs, and let's continuously see Steph Curry as a senior citizen in basketball terms at this point of his career go out in the playoffs and put together stretches and see if he can't surprise some people and make a little run in the playoffs. It's Evan Giddings. You can hear him on 95.7 The Game. You can hear him on the St. Mary's Gales calls on the radio. Thanks for joining the show today, Ev.